Oh, welcome to the Sharpe Boy Show. So happy to have you with me this afternoon. You know, I got to tell you, today is going to be, by the way, a reaction show. A little bit past, right at 7:30 on the East Coast, and I am trying my best to make sure that I'm able to give you some interesting content on things that I know a lot of people are often asking me, Larry, I need you to be able to, tell me about X or tell me about Y. But sometimes when I'm just talking about it, right? Just yapping. It doesn't always land. So I sometimes try, whenever I can, to literally take a few minutes and to kind of have someone else say it, and then I then chat about it, if that makes any sense, right? I talk about the thing after them talking about the thing. That's the piece that I try to do. And I've been doing it with a lot recently with breaking points and other independent news. And I think that's the key. Independent news seems to be very interesting, and they tend to be usually pretty good. So, oh, wait a minute. I think I'm having trouble getting on. Am I having trouble getting on Rumble today? I'm not sure. I think, let me see if I can. I think I'm having trouble getting on Rumble. Let me see if I can fix my Rumble piece real fast. Let me see if I can. Can I fix my Rumble real fast? Hold on. I think I'm having a problem with Rumble right now. Let me just see if I am. I feel like I'm having some trouble with Rumble. So let me see if that's true. Hold on. Hold on. And I am having trouble with Rumble. Hold on. Let me fix my Rumble piece real fast if I can. And then I will get myself back in action here real fast. I did not realize I had a problem with Rumble. I will now redo it. All right, I should be going back on. I should have worked now. All right, sorry about that, guys. For those of you who are on Rumble, I apologize that I was off for a bit. I had a minor technical issue which I had to repair. So I should be going live on Rumble now. I hope I am. So apologize for that little glitch, but I am back in action. Let me grab, if I could, the piece that I wanted to grab on YouTube. YouTube, the piece I wanted to chat with, and I'm sorry I got all off on that because of my Rumble issue, was on Breaking Points today. Breaking Points was talking today about the idea of housing. Housing was their issue. And I want to bring this up if I could. I'm going to bring up their issue on housing. Because they decided to blame basically everything except what they should have been blaming on for housing. It was an interesting chat about it, and they talked about some real things, which I'm happy to talk about some real things. They did, but it really wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, let me see what I can do here. If I can pop this up real fast. Oh, do I have Rumble going again? Let me just make sure if I have Rumble going. I think I do. Okay, I'm good now. All right, this is a piece from Breaking Points talking about housing. And I wanted to bring this up because the guy wrote a book. It's an important piece. Let me bring this up now. I pause for the start. Rough start today, but we'll keep going.
One of the issues we've really tried to consistently cover on this show, because it is so central to literally everyone, is the issue of housing. And
Correct.
With that in mind, we are really happy to be joined by an author, Brian Goldstone, and journalist who's just put on a fantastic new book called There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America.
And this is a part that's interesting. I brought this up often. And for those of you who don't know, people often think about homeless people as just the crazy guy who is out there being nutty, right? That's what we think of. But that isn't that's a chunk of homeless people. That's true. That is a subsection of them, but there are many homeless people who do not fit that model at all. Some of them are actually families, some are working, many of them are temporarily homeless, and some are different. This is about specifically people who are working and homeless.
That takes a look at a number of families in and around the Atlanta area who are working, doing everything right, and yet still, because of the cost of housing, find themselves homeless, a much undercovered. And
now she brings up the idea of doing everything right. That's an assumption, right? And this is a part that we have, which does drive me a little bit crazy. The idea that because someone is working, they are by default doing everything right. Not always true.
I guess we could talk to Brian about whether or not it's a new dynamic. But Brian, great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Krystal. It's great to be with you.
Yeah.
Emily's not going to say much here because, again, I often complain about Emily because her personality isn't strong enough to be up against Krystal. Krystal is a very strong personality, and Emily's not, and she often isn't able to respond effectively. Lars, thank you, sir. You are a member. I love that. Rocking and rolling. New membership, guys. Every member counts. Thank you so much. So, yes.
Of course. Just tell us, share if you would, the inspiration for the book and also a little bit about just one of these families and how they end up in this situation.
And the family part's tough.
Yeah, so I first got launched into the subject when my wife, who's a nurse practitioner, was working at a community health center here in Atlanta where we live. And she was just stunned.
So she works at a community health center. Good for her. She's trying to make things better. Good for her.
And by this trend that she was seeing where, patients who were working at like Walmart or McDonald's or driving for Uber and Lyft, when they finished their shifts, they weren't going to an apartment. They were going to shelters or living with others or sleeping in the very cars they had just done, an airport run in for Uber and Lyft. And so as she told me about that, I was shocked. I was like, I haven't.
That's the sad part. Right? Why this is important is people should understand people fall into homelessness for many different reasons. It isn't just because they became an addict, or that's what people always think. Is that a reason? That is a reason, yes, but that isn't the only reason.
In all of the reading I've done about homelessness, I've never seen this sort of discussed, this phenomenon.
If all the reading you've done, and you've done more than me, you haven't found this out, wow. What are you reading? And I'm not trying to be flippant. What I'm saying is this guy's a journalist, right? So you don't know this about homelessness. I knew, and I'm not a journalist.
Of the working homeless. And so I ended up writing a magazine story for the New Republic about it. And even when that was over, I felt like I had only scratched the surface. And, one of the families who I profile in the book, who I followed, I think their story really illustrates this trend, this dynamic where families aren't falling into homelessness. They're really being pushed. This one family, Celeste is the parent's name. Her story begins in this really dramatic way with her rental home burning down. But
the system has to change. But the problem I don't like about this narrative at the beginning already is it's almost as if people are pushing them. And if you see the title of this is Housing Hunger Games, Private Equity's War on Workers. Yet they won't speak about that at all. That's utterly just clickbait. I'm not joking. And the reason why I looked at this is because private equity is actually starting to invest less in homes now. They're actually backing away, which is why Kathy Hochul, my governor, has decided that she now is going to stop these private equity people because they've been lowering the amount they've been trying to buy recently because the housing market is starting to collapse, specifically in Florida.
As the reporting shows, it wasn't this dramatic house fire that pushed her family into homelessness. It was the fact that months later, after the house burned down, she realized that the private equity firm that owned her home, who was her landlord, had filed an eviction on her on a home that was no longer standing, that was literally uninhabitable. And her credit score was tanked, this 3-digit number that has come to determine whether millions of Americans have access to something as basic.
So the credit score screwed her over. It makes sense. I've seen it happen to many people. Utterly, that makes a lot of sense. But there are laws against that, by the way. There are laws. You are a credit score. You can't use a credit score to deny somebody housing, particularly in New York State. You can't do that. That's not a thing for housing. Now, does that stop you from buying a house? Perhaps yes, right? But this was rental. that doesn't stop you from renting.
As a place to live, her credit was destroyed, and that is what forced her and her children into homelessness.
And what are some of the common?
That connection, the fact that her house burned down, to me tells me that if she didn't have insurance or if they weren't helping her out in whatever the case may be, she then had to go live someplace else, and that was too expensive. You don't go into homelessness because your credit is bad. That's not a thing. You go into homelessness because you don't have enough money. I'm not trying to put it down. I'm saying the logic is you're attacking. You're saying it's because your credit's bad. That's not the reason why.
I mean, I'm sure every story is unique, but what are some of the commonalities throughout the families and the people that you talked to?
Good question.
What are some of the common themes?
Yeah, I mean, each of the 5 families who I followed over several years, to write this book, they all have really singular, really distinctive stories and journeys.
Okay.
But I think what comes through really clearly is the common denominator that the reason so many people are becoming homeless.
The common denominator, the reason why so many people are,
in this country is because they don't have access to housing they can afford.
That makes sense. I'm with you. Okay, we have it. We got a winner. The reason why they're homeless, most of them, not all. Of course, there are issues with people who have addiction problems and mental health issues. Of course, those people exist. But the biggest reason is they don't have access to housing they can afford. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Okay, that's great. Good. So Kim goes, she needs a lawyer. Correct. It wasn't the credit score that got her, Kim. You know that, right? That's not an issue. Now, Lunatic's right, though. The credit score system is a scam. True. That's accurate. That's true. But also true, Kim, both of you guys, thank you for being members, by the way. Yes, she does need a lawyer. 100%. If she had a lawyer, if that was I don't think that was in New York State. If that's in New York State, she's good. I'm not joking. But we'll get to that in a second.
And, the term working homeless really demands that we confront not just the homeless side of that equation, but the working side as well. These are people who are working and working and working some more. And it's not just that their wages are too low, although there's certainly that as well. It's that the very nature of work has changed for millions of Americans. It's become ever more volatile, insecure. People don't know how many hours they're going to be working from one week to the next.
And that's a bigger picture here. And it's an important picture, right? The concept of work changing. And sadly, our government will not say it. And too many people still believe it. And they think that inherently an hours is hours. Hours of labor matter. Your hourly labor, be very clear on this, make some of you upset, but you have to understand this. This is not my opinion. This is how it actually works in the world. And the sooner everyone understands this, the better off we'll all be. Your hourly labor has no intrinsic value. It has no specific value just because you worked for an hour. What matters is what is the outcome of that labor. That's what matters to every business owner, to every employer, except for the federal government. Federal government, government in general, just hours matter, but that's it, right? And we still think, well, I work for 8 hours, so I should get paid. Yes, that's true. But if you don't produce whatever the boss or owner wants, they're not going to want to keep you. That's why it's volatile, right? That's why you have to understand that to be true. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying that's true. Now, people who, for example, who are farmers, you get that completely. People who are entrepreneurs get that completely, right? You're a farmer. You've got to fix the fence because the cows are getting out. It doesn't matter if that takes you 1 hour or 4 days. The amount of time you spend on the fence isn't the value you produced. Making the fence so the cows don't escape, that's the value. If that takes you 1 hour or 4 days, it's got to get done. The outcome is what matters. That's becoming far more open for a lot of people. And be very, very, very clear. Next thing to remember, nobody, one more time, nobody who was wealthy and or powerful in America, in the world, I'm saying America, but in the world, became that way because of their hourly salary. And repeat that. Nobody. There's not one person who said, I'm rich now. Why? Because my hourly rate is high. That's not the reason why they became wealthy. Now, can you do well with high hourly rates? Yes, you can. But you're not going to be super wealthy or super powerful because you have a high hourly rate. That's not the reason. You do because of something else. Value, investments, whatever the case may be, you will find another way. That's not how you're going to do it. So that's the piece for us to understand here. And we as Americans have to get that as soon as possible. The more you get that, when someone is looking for a job, when someone's looking for something, looking for a higher hourly rate is a way to survive. It is. It isn't the way to prosper.
The next, Celeste, that woman who I just talked about, whose house burned down, she was later diagnosed with ovarian and breast cancer, and she was having to choose, do I go to my warehouse job or do I go to my chemo treatment? Because if I miss a shift at work, I don't get paid. And then me and my kids go from being in this squalid extended stay hotel room to being on the street. So
there we go. She is in, that's why she became homeless, because she's in an extended stay hotel. That makes sense. It wasn't the credit score. It's because she was paying for that extended stay hotel. That at least makes sense. Now we're clear. That's the reason why. I get it.
It's not just wages. It's not just rents. It's that the nature of work and really the nature of housing, a lack of basic tenant rights and tenant protections that has caused homelessness to rise to the highest level.
Utterly made up. I don't care what you think. Utterly made up. The fact that the reason for a rise in homelessness is because of lack of tenant rights? And you might go, Larry, okay, I'm going to give you receipts. This part bothered me, right? This is the part that bothered me. That's utterly not true. And I'm going to explain this in a second. Here are the list of states where the homelessness has gone highest recently. Both recently and also long term. But here is recently, I'll go longer term also, but here is recent. Change, homelessness, change, right? Highest, Hawaii, DC, New York, Oregon, Vermont, California, all going up. District of Columbia went down. All of them went up. What state has the most friendly, most possible assistance for renters and tenants? New York. Number one. Number two, California. They're top 5 in homelessness. What is one of the best one in homelessness? Texas. Texas is going down. Texas is easiest to build, has the least tenant rights. It is the most landlord-friendly state. I'm not joking. I'll show you data on this. It is the most landlord-friendly state in the union, and homelessness is going down. What he said, there is no evidence of that. Every state that has the least and lowest amount of tenant rights has the least homelessness. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have tenant rights. I'm not saying that. But he said the reason is because a lack of basic tenant rights. That is a lie. That is demonstrably not true. His ideology is coming through. I just showed you data. Of course, there is more. This is most tenant rights. New York, most land. This is New York. How friendly New York is. New York has, I'm not joking, rent control, eviction protections, security deposit caps, an eviction process that allows you to not evict people, landlord responsibilities. Landlords in New York City go to jail. I'm not joking. They go to jail if they don't do the right thing. In any other civil agreement, you don't go to jail. In New York City and New York State, you go to jail. Anti-harassment laws. So I'm not joking. It's a true story. If you are a landlord and you go to your tenant and they haven't paid for whatever, 2 months, and you say, hey, you need to pay me. Come on. They can call the cops, say you harass them, and the cops will arrest you. If you think I'm making that up, you can do a simple Google search. That's absolutely true. They will actually arrest you as a landlord. And they might go, Larry, landlords getting arrested. Yeah, because remember, the people who are hurt by all these rules aren't the big guys. They're the little guys. Over 50% in New York City of the landlords are massive landlords. The average landlord in New York City has, I'm not joking, over 20 properties. Over 1,000 units. Yes. This system ensures that only the big guys can survive. The little guys get arrested because they're struggling. They're struggling while the big guys make tons of money. That's how this system actually works. So what he just said is utterly false. New York State has the most, California, the next most protections for tenants. And both of those, top 5 in homelessness and getting worse. Top 5 in homelessness and getting worse. So that connection is something he made up. That's not a real connection. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm telling you the truth. That is not a real connection. There are other reasons why people are homeless. That's not one of them. That's stuff that he just wants to say big government matters. Big government shows that when you have big government, you literally have more homelessness. Again, literally, I showed you data, more homelessness, not less. All right. Let me grab some more if I could.
In recorded history.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a perfect storm that spells disaster for these families.
Okay.
Because you have years of wage stagnation, years of attacks on unions, you know, if it's
wages and unions. Okay. That's what you just said. Wages and unions.
With the conversations we've been having about deindustrialization.
So that's what she said, right?
And, you know, the fact that it is so difficult to earn a living wage in this country. And then you add to that skyrocketing rents, skyrocketing housing costs, and you have utter.
Yes, but she just said unions and wages. That's what she just said, right? Okay. She said unions and wages. She said that was a reason why there's homelessness. Yet again, she just made that up. That's her ideology. She's just saying that's not true. How do I know that? Well, let me give you some more receipts. I brought the receipts tonight, guys. I brought the receipts. Number one, here again, New York State, California, the ones who have all kind of problems, highest minimum wage. They have the highest minimum wages, 16, 17, 18 bucks. Now you're saying, well, that's not enough. I'm not saying it's enough. What I'm saying is, if what he's saying, it's renters' rights and tenant rights that matter, if that's true, then relative to other states, New York State should have a lower homelessness rate. It doesn't, has one of the highest and getting worse. If it was wages, well, New York State has a high minimum wage and has high wages. If that was true, what she just said, then that the law could put that in there, then there will be less relative homelessness. There isn't, right? But she also talked about, of course, the lowest minimum wages. The lowest minimum wages, where are they? Texas. Yeah, where homelessness is not. What's the difference between Texas and New York? The biggest thing. You can build in Texas. It's the regulatory environment. Big government creates regulations where people are not being able to build. You can't build. That's the problem. In these states, you can build, even though there's a low minimum wage. So housing's cheaper because you have more of it. It is literally supply and demand. Well, Larry, it's unions. Okay, let's look at unions. By percentage, what's the highest unions? Hawaii, New York, Washington, New Jersey, all with very high homelessness. Oh, California, all very high. High unions. Only Hawaii has more union workers than New York does. New York has 20%. Hawaii is 24%. Homeless is high in all of them. So unions aren't the answer. These things aren't the answer, right? That is not the answer. What about these evil landlords? Okay, evil landlords. I'll buy it. The landlords are evil. Okay, so the average landlord, who's a small landlord owner, owns one building or such, how much do they make in New York City? Well, the average makes a little under 90K a year. Under 90K a year. The average one, a little under 90K. Well, that's a good wage. I'm sorry, that's a 90K, sorry, a little under 70K, sorry. Makes a little under 70K. So like around $68,000, $65,000 a year. You might go, Larry, that's not a bad wage. Some parts of the country, $65,000 a year is a very good wage. Sure. New York City? No. No, it's not. Family needs to make $138,000 a year in New York City to be considered a living wage. I'm not joking. Yes. So you'd have to have two of those. So if you're a landlord with one place, you probably have to have a secondary job if you have a family. If you live by yourself, you can survive. You can survive by yourself if you are a landlord with one place, one unit, landlord, you can survive by yourself. If not, you can't. Now, I told you about the average. The average guy in New York who owns a bunch of buildings owns 20 buildings. 20. 1,000 units. 1,000. That person has people who do things. That person doesn't get arrested. That person has managers and has also security and people, and they run construction groups. Why? If I'm a guy who has 1 or 2 units, I don't have a deal with construction crews. I have construction maybe once a year, if I'm lucky, maybe, probably not even that much, and it's small jobs. I have 20 buildings and 1,000 units. I'm using construction guys every single week. I'm using construction guys. Every single week I'm using construction guys. So when I want some of those guys to go to someone's apartment and ask them politely to leave, which is literally against the law, but done all the time, and say, oh, you don't want to leave or you don't want to pay your rent? No worries. We're going to do some work on your apartment every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not joking. Those are tactics being used in New York City. People who have big and huge amounts of buildings because they have the money, the connections, the time, the energy to do so. So they do. They hire management companies that enforce their bidding, do their bidding, enforce their will. That's what they do. But when you're a 1 or 2 person guy, you can handle it. You may go, Larry, how many big guys are there? Over half of the landlords in New York City are people who have massive amounts of buildings. Over half. When you have, in fact, when it comes to people who have like, I think, is it 15 or more, something like that? Oh, my day's gonna be off. But like 12 and more, something like that. 2/3 of landlords have like 12 buildings or more. When you make this system, when you create this system of heavy government intervention, when you do this with all this, the little guy is the one who gets destroyed. If you go back 50, 60 years, a lot of individual people owned a building. Not anymore. It's going away. Yes. That's the problem that we have here. Just because someone is sitting here saying, oh my God, we need to have more government this, government. No, that's absolutely not true. So that's something that people just, again, they just made up because their ideology told them so. But isn't the answer? The answer is always the same thing. Build more housing. That's the answer. Build more housing and end rent control.
Disaster for so many families that are trying to do everything right, they're working hard. They're trying to, follow the playbook of how you get ahead in America. And it just doesn't work for so many people now. I was curious as I was reading the book. I'm sure you've been watching some of the.
Okay, that's been happening more and more. She's correct. With that logic, though, also, if you look at it, people aren't getting ahead, and we've had more and more government. Right? Yes, more and more laws to stop that. More and more of them. Absolutely. So I'm going to grab a couple comments real fast. We keep going. I want to grab a couple of these. Andrea says, Stossel had an episode of why New York City, I think, is that Seattle, has such a high homeless problem. It's because of building regulations. Correct. That's accurate, Andrea. That's the problem. The Democrats wrote a book on this just a couple months ago. It came out. It's called Abundance, and it's about ending bureaucracy. Yes. They're the ones who said it. Democrats said this. Ezra Klein wrote the book. He said the reason why the Democratic Party is being destroyed is because they're all about bureaucracy. That's the reason. Correct. That's it. She goes on to go, Andrew goes on to say, it is because of building regulations. Also, did you see Seattle's trying to pass rent control now? Yes, because that's the answer. Guy Mondami here, who's running for mayor of New York, wants to pass more rent control. Of course he does. More rent control. That's what he wants. They might go, well, Larry, that sounds great. If you control the rent, then things will go well. No, No. Now, how do you know that? Here's how I know that. Yes, Andrea, I knew someone would say that. And I brought receipts for that one too. Hold on. Let me see if I can grab this one. This is from the only guy that we can say recently who's done exactly that. Javier Milei. In Argentina, he ended rent control. And when he did, the end of Argentina's extensive rent controls have resulted in a tripling of the supply of rental apartments in Buenos Aires and a 30% price drop. 30% price drop. You're going to lower rents and rent control. I've been saying this forever. Libertarians have been saying this forever. And now we actually have success. We'll go, where's libertarian policies worked? Right here. An entire country of tens of millions of people in a major city. There we go. Ended rent control. And what happened? People started building again. People started renting stuff out. People started opening up their apartments to actually be rented again. And all of a sudden, a 30%, could you imagine a 30% decrease in rent for people? For a lot of people, that's serious money. If you're dropping $2,000 on your rent every month, taking away 30%, your rent goes from $2,000 to $1,400. That's $600 a month you got extra in your pocket now. Or you're paying your bills off, or you're paying your debt off, or whatever. You got a car note, whatever. You're paying $3,000? That's $900 gone. Knocked off. Your rent. Gone. Happened already. Not making this up. And she's like, rent control. Yes, people want rent control. Even though we've shown it does not work. Doesn't work at all. Prices can come down. Rent prices now are dropping here in America as people start leaving Florida. People leaving Florida because of the housing crisis. And as people leave Florida, what's happening? Every year in 2023 and 2024, rents have gone down in Florida, average over Florida, about 10% per year. So last 2 years, 20%. And you hear people all the time say that capitalism doesn't work because greedy landlords, they never lower the rent. Literally, they do. Literally, they do. Here in America and Argentina. If you can't get people to pay the higher rent, then they will have to lower the rent or people can't afford it. That's how that works. Yes, that's how that works. It's literally, the answer is build more housing. That is the answer. That's literally the answer. They may go, wait a minute, but is that true in America? Well, I'm going to show you that too, because I know you're wondering, is that true? It is. This right here, if I may, is showing you rent control. California and Oregon have the strictest state law rent controls, along with New York and New Jersey. Huh, that's weird. Which states again have the worst homelessness rates? Oh, look at that, New York and Oregon and Washington. Yeah, they're those same states. Isn't that weird? So lots of rent control means lots of homelessness. That's weird how that works. It's weird how that works. And the people who have the easiest building codes, the easy way to build, are the ones with least homelessness. But Larry, without these building codes, all the buildings cause people to die. Where are all the people dying in Texas from building code violations? Where are all the people dying in Texas from the buildings collapsing? Where are all those people dying from? Where's it happening? I don't remember. I don't remember seeing that. Wyoming, same thing. North Dakota, very easy to build there. Where are all the people dying in these states? Where's all the families being crushed? Where are they? Nowhere. It is a fantasy. It is magically created to make people go, see, capitalism bad, government good. It's not. It's simply not. And this is why I brought receipts. I didn't want you to think I'm just making this up because I'm some crazy libertarian. I mean, I am some crazy libertarian, but that's not why I brought that up. It's actually real. This is a real thing. And that's the point. All right, let me keep going if I may.
Discourse about the abundance agenda and, you know, how one of the factors that has led to housing unaffordability is too many onerous zoning regulations and the way that's limited construction or made it.
She brings that up, which I told you, this book is called Abundance, and they brought up this point, right? And she brings this up. This is the funny part. Krystal brings up the idea of, you know, regulations in this book, you know, and that's one of the reasons. No, That's the reason. Let me say it again. That's the reason. That's not one of the reasons. That is the reason. Everything else she said, she just made up because her ideology tells her so. But that's the actual reason. Everything else she just made up. It's not the case at all. John says, blue state homelessness are living proof that livable wage and rent controls doesn't boost mobility and growth. Correct. Literally, we're seeing it. We're seeing it. It's so obvious. Laura says, thank you for being a member, Laura. Bureaucrats gaining from someone else's loss. Our entire civilization needs to restructure and promote values that include service to self as a result of serving others. Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%. So I love that.
So that it's, there's less affordable housing available. I just was curious, based on your reporting with these individuals and the dynamics that go into the housing market, how much of a fix some of that you think really would be?
How much would that be a fix is the question. Laura goes on to say, though, before we get there, yes, overregulation. My grandparents owned and rented up to 4 houses and maintained them. They worked hard, played by the rules, made investments, and lived the American dream. That's my point. If you go back 40 years, you go back 30 years, a lot of individual families owned property. They owned multiple homes. That was a thing. Now it's not very common, particularly in New York, nowhere near as common. So what is the answer?
Yeah, I mean, I take a kind of ecumenical approach to solutions and how we can finally solve this mounting catastrophe. I think we need a kind of both and approach. But I do think that simply like deregulating the market, letting the market do its thing, cutting the...
He literally says when she asks the question, well, these abundance people, right? They're not as far left as I am, so clearly they're wrong. They say things like deregulate, like what libertarians would say. And we know they're crazy, so they can't be right. So, Mr. Brian, can you please tell me why libertarians are wrong? And what he says is, well, I take this ecumenical, he just says some stuff which means nothing. And then he goes, yeah, libertarians are right. So he just says, listen.
Red tape and really allowing the private market to sort of provide for the housing needs of Americans who need it is not.
What? So before she asks a direct question, it's about tenant rights, which is not, I showed you. And she's like, yeah, it's unions and minimum wage, which it's not, which I showed you. Then when she actually asked the question, so these crazy people who are Democrats trying to fix our party, who are kind of being a little bit libertarianish because it actually works and they know it's true. When they say that, can you please tell me, Brian, why they're wrong? He's like, well, they're kind of right. He just said it. He said, let the private market do its thing. Let the private sector fulfill the need. This dude's libertarian all of a sudden. What happened? You know what? When I look back at this, maybe the true gift was libertarians who made it along the way. Maybe that's what really happened. We made another one. But look his face. He's like, I can't believe I'm saying it. His face. I'm saying libertarian stuff. I'm not supposed to. I don't want to say libertarian stuff. I'm not supposed to. Michael Long, thank you for the $5, my friend. Super chat. And the thing is that fantasy is so bad that reality is blurred with Peter Pan, Captain Hook, Captain Crunch, and Sylvester with reality. It is everywhere, Michael. You are correct. These guys just keep talking trash. And the thing is, it's almost like they just have to say the talking points. So they have to spend the first 5 minutes going, capitalism bad, rich people bad, capitalism bad. And what's the answer? It's capitalism. Private market. That's kind of the answer because government's been failing. So it's not that. They've actually admitted it, but they hate admitting it. They hate it. Let me look over on Rumble if I can. Joel says, piecework, get paid for your productivity. They think $50 an hour would solve poverty and homelessness. Everyone will be rich. Let's just do that then. You know what? And if we talk from our yesterday's show, modern monetary theory, Joel, let's just do like, I don't know, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. You know what? $250. Let's do $250. It doesn't matter. It's just magic money tree. So all good. VA lady says, I knew landlords that had 1 or 2 properties and had to sell them during COVID when the government said no evictions. Yes. They don't mention that either. See, what they don't talk about is one of the reasons why that happened is because when the government made all these rules to protect the renters, who did it actually protect? Protect the wealthy. Because again, if you have 20 buildings and 1,000 units in New York City, which again, I'm talking New York City specifically, this is different all around, but that's New York City. I use New York City because it has the most renter protections in the country, highest rent control in the country. So all the things she talks about, highest unionization, except for Hawaii. So second highest unionization, right? So that's all the things she talked about. New York City has all of those things. And what happened? The little guys got crushed, had to sell their units to the big guys who bought them, bought up all the big units, all the units of little guys. So they went from 1,000 units to 1,200 units. They went from 20 buildings to 25 buildings. That's what happened. That's how it actually worked. So there we go. Thank you for that. All right. His face is funny.
Adequate. I think what some of that discourse maybe leaves out is power. The question of power. Who has it? Who doesn't have it?
See, I have to see, he just said, I said some libertarian stuff. And boy, I'm going to get canceled. People are going to attack me. So don't do that. I better bring up the lefty stuff, the power dynamic, because that's critical. Now, don't get me wrong. Power does matter. I'm not here to say there's no such thing as power. Of course there is. Of course there is. But more government does what? Gives more power to the powerful. I've just shown you that. If you're telling me you're worried about a power dynamic, okay, then let the little guy build. Let the little guy have property. Let the little guy have assets. How about that? Let every family have assets. You're now giving power to everyone. If you care about the power dynamic, government has proven it is not the one to defend you. Proven. So, okay, I'm with you on your power dynamic. Let's do that. Government is not the answer. Clearly. Andrea goes, wow, sounds like a libertarian idea. Yeah, they became that. Yes. Glenn says, you're funnier than Dave Smith, Larry. It's true. It is. It's true, I am. And better looking. Both of those things are true, Glenn. I am both funnier and better looking. Don't be mad at me, Dave. But it's just true. Just saying. Both of them. Yes, 100%. So.
The immense power asymmetry that exists in this country between the renter class and those who are fortunate enough to own property and to be.
See that? Those who are, he went right back to left-leaning talking points. Those who are fortunate enough to own property. It's just fortunate. You didn't work hard. You didn't work hard for that. That's not what you did. You were just lucky. That's what you did. Laura, your family, they didn't work hard. Your parents, they were chumps, as we just said. They just got lucky. They were fortunate. That's what he said. See, people who talk left will always say that anyone who has something has it because they're lucky. But I wonder, Krystal, she's got some cash. She's got some success. She's got some money. She's lucky. If you ask Krystal, you're just lucky. Or you're not skilled. Krystal, you didn't work hard for that. You just got lucky. That's all right. She's like, I work hard. That's what you would say. So when it's you, you work hard. When it's somebody else, they were just lucky. How about this guy? Right? Didn't he write his book? He's going to make some money on his book coming on a show? Was that because he was lucky? Or is it because he worked hard and wrote a book? I mean, it's probably a garbage book, but that's fine. Doesn't matter. Somebody's going to buy it. So now when he goes on shows and starts talking about how the answer is more government, but no, it's not. So when he literally contradicts himself in the same interview, when asked, what's the issue? Let the private market do it. That's the only answer. And then go, but power, but don't ever forget the renter class and anyone who has money is just lucky. You don't work hard for your money. You're just lucky. That's it. So Laura, I'm sorry. You thought your grandparents were hard workers. Brian has expressed it. I don't mean to be mean. It's Brian, not me. They didn't work hard. Your grandparents were just lucky. That's it. That's it. That's how that works. So any of you who have any assets, you are just lucky. That's it.
Landlords. And also, I think what's missing is just how incredibly profitable all this insecurity has become, not just for,
Okay. The insecurity has become profitable, not for the average landlord, only for the very wealthy. My point, right?
NIMBY homeowners who don't want an affordable housing complex built near their, neighborhood. But
yes, now he brings it up. Government protects them. In New York City, we have a thing. In New York City, you can landmark your property. Now, what does that mean? You can go to your community and say, my building is a landmark, for whatever it is. It's where, I don't know, Mark Twain took a dump here. So now it's a landmark. And they go, yes, it's a landmark. Yes, landmark. So now you can't do anything in that building at all unless the community agrees. You might go, well, Larry, is that a bad thing? Well, look, if it's your property, I get it. You want to protect your property, right? So no one can buy it. What happens is now nobody wants to buy it. And you want to keep your property. Nobody wants to buy it. You protect your property, right? Because you can't fix it. You can't knock it down. You can't rebuild it. Okay. Not great, but I get it. The world's not going to end. But here's the worst part. Your community, I'm not making this up, can landmark your property whether you want to or not in New York. So yes, you have a building. Someone decides, I'm gonna landmark your building. Your building that you bought, Shelley. I'm gonna landmark it. You're like, wait a minute, I don't want you to landmark my building. It doesn't matter. I think once George Washington came by and drank a beer there. So I'm gonna landmark your building now. But wait a minute, you can landmark my building, so that means I can't change it. Correct. Yeah, but there's gonna be problems. I'm gonna have building code issues. Yes. So I'll have to pay for those building code issues. Correct. I'd keep paying taxes. Correct. And I'm gonna get fined because I can't make changes because my tenant's gonna be mad at me. Correct. And I can't raise rents. Correct. So you're gonna help me with that? No, you're just screwed. So is the government now, since my community landmarked me and screwed me over, are you guys gonna help me with all the bills that I have to deal with that? No. So I'm just screwed. Yes, that happens in New York City. So what happens then? This is what actually happens. So now I'm screwed. I just got my property landmarked. What am I going to do? I got to try to get rid of it. Well, I can't get rid of my property anymore because I'm going into debt. So now somebody comes by and goes, I'll buy your property. You can't. It's landmarked. You don't worry about that. You want to buy your property? I'll buy your property. But it's landmarked. You don't worry about that. You want to buy your property? Yeah. Then he goes with his boys to the community and goes, you need to unlandmark that. Why? Because I'm this powerful guy who will crush you. Okay. And they unlock it and then he buys it. And now he goes from 1,200 to 1,220. That's New York City. And you think I'm making this up? You can just do a Google search, right? I've said this stuff on Breaking Points before, right? I've done it before on Breaking Points. I've expressed how corrupt New York City is. And I've shown you, if you remember the video, I showed you the actual code in New York City, which makes this stuff legal. So yeah, that's how it works. So his answer is, we got to keep saying talking points, big government, which literally makes things worse. Literally makes things worse. Yes.
How profitable it's become for some of the most influential and powerful Wall Street firms in this country. I was absolutely shocked to discover that at every step in these families' journeys, the 5 families who I follow in this book, there were entire business models designed to capitalize on their precarity. And that's not only the private equity firms like Celeste Landlord, who are buying up vast swaths of America's rental housing and really making that housing much, much more insecure, pushing people out through these automated eviction systems.
Now, then he's not wrong with that, but that has been changing. Recently, though, they've been moving into, believe it or not, Section 8 housing. Yes, which is all voucher housing. They've been moving into voucher housing. That's been their next step. So yes, Andrew asks, houses can be landmarked? Of course. It's New York. Whatever it takes to destroy you is, what we'll do. So yes is the answer. 100% yes. 100% yes. Forrest Mommy says, they see people who own property and pay their taxes as bad. It's so bizarre. Well, no, not to be clear. If you say the right words, right? Like, people who have property are lucky. You say those things, right? You say things like, if you're powerful, you're evil. If you say those things, Forrest Mommy, that's the magic spell that makes your evilness go away. See, you don't say those magic words. That's why you're evil. See, if you say the magic words, right? Capitalism bad. Ooh, you do that. And you say anyone who has property is lucky. Ooh. then the magic comes off and you become not evil. So say the magic words, you'll be fine. It could work. Just telling you. I'm giving you the spells. That's how it works. Fahim, thank you, my friend, for 99. I do appreciate this, man. I'm trying my best to keep working to make this work, so I do appreciate it. Thank you. So, yes, I do think that's kind of funny. So, any case, let me keep going.
Algorithms that determine, that someone just gets an eviction filing if they're 2 days late on their rent and there's no human to interact with, not only pushing people out of their housing, but increasingly buying up the very sites and places where families and individuals are pushed into once they become homeless. And nowhere is that truer than with this phenomenon of extended stay hotels. It's an entire world of homelessness that we're not seeing. And, during the pandemic, Blackstone and Starwood Capital, these two private.
Okay, not during the pandemic. See, this is what I want to make sure we're clear. I want to be sure that you understand this. Viruses do not destroy your business. That's not how they work. Viruses do not destroy your job. Viruses don't crush your ability to go see your, say, sponsor or your therapist or getting your drug that you need so you can either deal with your mental illness or deal with your addiction problem. Viruses don't do that. Viruses don't get you fired. They don't do that. They don't. What viruses do is to, depending upon the population you exist in, they either harm you in some way or they're not that bad and they don't harm you at all. One of those two things. That's what viruses do. They either harm your body or they don't in some way. That's what viruses do. The only thing that can do the other things I said is government. See? So this wasn't the pandemic's fault. That's also a lie. This was the government's fault for locking us down, from keeping us away from our friends and families, from destroying our businesses, and again, only small businesses, right? If you were a big business, you were fine. If you're Walmart, if you're Amazon, you're good. No worries whatsoever. You are good. If you're at a local store, you're finished. If you have 1,000 units in New York City, you're good. You can take a hit. You take a hit, but you're good. Because everyone else going under, as the VA lady, my VA lady said, everyone else going under, you're going to buy their properties. So you're going to make all your money back. And they all did. You're going to make all your money back. The little guy, you just finished. So it wasn't the pandemic. It was the government's terrible, horrible, embarrassing response to the pandemic. That's what it actually was. And if you like that statement I just made, then click the button known as Lima, India, Kilo, Echo. Why haven't you clicked that button? Why? Do you want people to be homeless? You do. You do. It's your fault. It's your fault. Click the button. Click the button, lest people will be homeless. That's not true. But anyway, I'm going to say that because I want you to click the button. Click the button. Why? Because Mr. Rhythm, Al Gore, Rhythm, he loves when you click that button. So please do so. Click the button known as like. Do that. But not just that. Guys, I need you to share this someplace. I need you to share this into somebody else's Facebook page. Share this into a Facebook group. Share this on X. Share this on YouTube. Let other people see this and know them. I'm talking trash about Krystal Ball. Come on. That's always fun. Do that. And I'm watching Emily try to fight this horribly. She can't, but she's trying. I'm watching her do it. She's trying. What's about that? So please share this if you can. It does matter. Follow me on Facebook, X, and Rumble. If you've not followed me on Facebook, X, and Rumble, now I know you want more homeless families. You're a bad person. You are a bad person. The VA lady says, if you don't click the like button, you love rent control. Yes, you do. You do. So click the button. That's all I'm saying. If you have not already subscribed to Sharpe Way on YouTube, please do so. Go head over to Sharpe Way on YouTube and subscribe. If you want yours chat to go to the front, you can super chat me or you can rant me on Rumble. Super chat me on YouTube or rant me on Rumble. If you really want to help out, become a member. $4.99 per month. You're saying, Larry, that's the price of a cup of coffee. Yes. Yes. I have lots of it. Yes. And for the price of a cup of coffee, you get someone who Glenn said is funnier than Dave Smith and better looking. Well, I said that part. But I'm going to say Glenn said that. Glenn said I'm better looking. I'm just going to say that. Yes. So I'm better looking and funnier than Dave Smith. That's worth $5. $5 a month. You can do it on YouTube or you can do it on Rumble. Plus, I'm doing shows like every day. Come on now. It's a lot. And the more I do this, the more I can do this, the more that people can see how important this is. And you guys know I bring receipts. I show what's happening. People can see this. You can use it to talk about other people. Yes. Other people can see this. That's what matters. So please share this to the best of your ability. I appreciate it. So, all right, let me keep going if I can.
Equity giants, they saw that extended stay America was raking in hundreds of millions of dollars, while all other hotels were at like zero occupancy. And they spent $6 billion buying this chain because they saw that these hotels are concentrated in areas of our country where working people are most likely to become homeless.
Yes. So let me move into that piece if I could. Why don't we fix homelessness? Why don't we? Because Lars has said it. Thank you, Lars, being a member, my friend. We have developed a homeless industrial complex. Correct. I call compassionate enabling. We actually hurt those who we try to help. True. So what have we done? We said, well, if we can get these people going to these extended stay places, the people who don't want to go to shelters, well, that's good because now they're spending money there. They're spending money there. This is getting money to our donors, which you're happy with because they're buying up the stuff. Good idea. They go there. And then not just that, if you go to a shelter, well, now the shelters, the federal government pays and or the state government pays these hotels. In New York City, there are hotels, you know this, who stopped taking regular people in, who only were taking homeless or only were taking migrants because the state and the federal government just paid them every night. Done and done. Done and done. We created an industrial complex. So if you're getting paid to service or to enable, to use Lars's words, to enable, why would you stop enabling? You're being paid. You're being paid to enable. So I'm going to keep enabling. So peace. Thank you for $2, my friend. What does $2 get you? It does get me a coffee, actually. It does. It does get me a coffee. So like the $5 gets me 2 coffees. I go through one at each show, at least. I'm good. I'm not as bad as I used to be. This is a true story. Back when I was running for governor in 2018, I was going through 9 cups of coffee a day. Yes. And then afterwards, when the campaign was over and I had lost 20 pounds and I had lost 6 figures of money and I drank 9 cups of coffee for months, I thought, I can just stop tomorrow. That's not how that works. I did, though. Like, I did stop. Like, I'm like, 9 cups is too much. The campaign's over. I'm going to stop. I did actually stop. I stopped. I said, no more coffee. I was disciplined. No more. And I could not function. I literally was going through withdrawal symptoms. I was like, okay, this is a problem. Like, I can't function. I could not function. So I went up to 6 cups of coffee a day. I know. Much better? No. I went to 6 cups of coffee a day and then weaned myself down to like 3. So now I have probably about 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day. I used to have 9. Now I'm down to 3 or 4. Sometimes I only have 2. Depends. If I decide to do heavy intermittent fasting, I'll only have 2. So sometimes I'll do 2, but usually I have 3 or 4 every day. Not as bad as 9. I'm much better. So this is one of them, Peace. Every bit counts. This is one of them. So thank you. All righty. Let me keep going here. All right. Andrea goes on and says, true, Larry's the best looking libertarian on YouTube. Accurate statement. Thank you, Andrea. And you know what the best part about me is? Of all my great things, it's my modesty. I think that's my greatest trait of all my wonderful traits, my modesty. Number 1. Anyway, just what I'm saying. I think you get that joke.
Lose stable housing. And so you have entire business models, very powerful business models that are actively exacerbating and really profiting off of this insecurity.
Yep. Are there examples of communities or policies that have dealt with this in a constructive way? Are there?
She's trying to like not say government. She's trying, Emily. You trying. You are trying. Yes. Andrew asks, how strong is your coffee? I do my coffee strong. It's like double scoop of organic Arab coffee. Yeah, it is. It is. Yes. It's double scoop. Yes, I do. Michael says, Larry, you should try methylene blue. It's safe, takes away brain fog. Who says I don't? I have my doubts. I tried it and I'm amazed. It helps me. Who says I don't? You're assuming I don't try methylene blue. I have already tried it already. Yeah, so yes. I'm already into that stuff. Come on now. You know me by now. Of course I am.
You know, things that we can point to and say, you know, look, this does work. This community used it, you know, to some success.
So she's asking, is there a non-government answer? Is there one? She's trying. I mean, I gave you like 20, but that's fine.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as like if we really open the lens on this crisis,
yes,
and one of the big things I'm trying to show in the book is that the official numbers on homelessness, as bad as they are, and again, we had over the last 2 years the highest level of homelessness on.
Okay, you're not going to answer the question, are you?
Record. Okay. As bad as those official numbers are, the reality is actually much, much worse. It's exponentially worse. And I estimate that the actual number is roughly 6 times that of the official number. And the reason I say that is because once we get a
okay, but she asked if there's a community answer, and he went, it's bad. You got it. You spent the last 20 minutes telling me that. But is there a community answer? It's bad. Okay.
Sense of the true severity and magnitude, and crucially, the actual root causes of this homelessness catastrophe, we realize that the kind of nibbling around the edges solutions that are often floated will simply not be enough. And
yes, okay. When we look at the root causes, which he expressed was the private market not building more houses, and then he did left-leaning talking points. Okay, lefty talking points. I got it. You got to make Krystal happy. You can't come back on because she'll go tell Kyle how bad you are. Her oldest son, she'll tell him how bad you are because you weren't lefty enough. So I guess, but okay, what's the answer?
Thing is keeping people in the homes they already have. And, I think I've been disabused in the process of reporting this book of the notion that
okay, he just said that he thinks the homelessness problem is 6 times, his words, what we say. That's what he says. 6 times. His words, not mine. And the answer is keeping people in the homes that they have. But what's the homelessness rate? Hold on. This was what he just said. This guy, who is I think journalist, whatever he is, he's a something. He says he's smart, or at least acts that way. I mean, something, right? So let me look at the homelessness per resident. I'm looking at the homeless percentages. Pretty high here. Yeah, these are high percentages. I'm looking around home. Let me see if I can get an actual percentage. What's the homelessness percentage in America? Let me see if I can find it real fast. We get the actual across the country. All right. It's a high increase. It's not saying how much. Increased by 30%. Okay, around 23 out of every 10,000 Americans. That's how many that's what USA Facts says. Out of every 10,000 Americans, 23 are homeless. So that's 0.23%. So he thinks it's 6 times that. So he thinks it's almost 2%. Is that right? What's 0.26? Oh no, sorry, 1.5%. So about 1.5%, right? So this says about 700,000, almost 800,000 people times 6, 2.4 million. Is that right? Is my math right? No, it's wrong. 3.2. So he's saying there's 3 million people, if we go by what he says, 3 million people, give or take, who are homeless in America right now. That's what he's saying, right? Okay. So the answer is keeping people in the homes they are now. What about the 3 million people who are homeless? What about them? What about them? If it's 1.5%, if it's more than that, then we're talking like 4.5 million people. What about them? We just leave them on the street. So she said, can you give me an answer that's community-based? And what he said is, if I were to say that, that wouldn't fit my left-leaning government good, private sector bad talking points. So I won't answer that question. Instead, I'll just say we should keep people in their homes because that's what I can say. He literally did not answer the question because it didn't fit the talking points. And Emily will immediately push back aggressively. No, she won't.
If this is solved, it's going to be because some policymaker in Washington or at state level wakes up and is like, I'm going to ease the suffering for these people. Some of the most promising trends that we're seeing is the emergence of a really powerful and vibrant tenant rights movement across the country.
Tenants' rights, that'll save us, except I've just shown it doesn't. And when asked if that would help, he said no. Look at her face. She's like, you didn't answer the question, and you gave me some BS which you just contradicted 20 minutes ago. Literally. When Krystal said, how can you fix this? He begrudgingly said, his words, private market has to do what it does by solving the problems, right? Then I showed you tenants' rights, New York State, the most in the country. Every tenants' right issue that you want, New York State has everything you could imagine. Everything. Most homelessness.
People organizing in their buildings, in their rental properties, and saying, this is intolerable, we're not going to stand for it. And in cities like Kansas City, we had the emergence of KC Tenants over the last several years that has demanded large-scale policy shifts. And I think that's the most promising thing we have right now.
So what's promising is we're going to have more government regulation and more renter protections, which means by default, big business will take over more of the rental properties. Larry, how do you know that? That's what's happening in New York. We have what he's asking for. I have an actual example of what he wants. I live in this city. It has what he wants. And what did that result in? The average landlord in New York City, and again, do your homework if you want to, has about 20 buildings and almost 1,000 units. That's the average. Google it yourself. I think I'm making this up. So do what that guy says, and what will happen? I told you what will happen because it's happening now. Or you could not do that, and you will not have as much homelessness. How do I know that? Texas. I just gave you the example of that. This is the funny part. Here it is, and we're blown away by this one. Phil, stay with me on this one. Stay with me on this one, Phil. Okay. All right. If you make an environment that's friendly to business, more businesses will go there. And when there's more businesses, there will by default be more jobs because businesses create jobs. Okay, stay with me, Phil. Okay. If you make an environment that's friendly to landlords, there will be more landlords. And what landlords have is units. And if you have more units, you will have cheaper rents. How do I know that? Texas and Argentina. Thank you, Phil. He stayed with me. I had to make sure I went slow for Phil. Make sure you got each one of those things, how that worked. That's how that works, Phil. That's how that works. So what he's saying is, his words are, let's make it as anti-landlord as possible, because that'll make things better. What? We doing that in New York and in California. And see, if you do that, you'll have less landlords. And if you have less landlords, you will have less units for renting, which means you'll have higher rents. This is not rocket science. It really isn't. And again, I've given you the physical examples. That's how it works. This is Life 85 says, there have been mold-related deaths due to landlord negligence for remediation. I know of people in New York that became homeless at one point because of black mold from water damage. That's true. That's true. Now, here's the thing. This is Life 85. That's already against the law. Already against the law. And landlords can go to jail for that in New York City, in New York State. You know that. In New York, you can go to jail. Already against the law. You can already go to jail. Yet we still have all these deaths. It's almost like more laws don't work. What? It's almost like that. Weird how that works. There we go. There we go. You guys are on Tisha James. I will talk about her later, not this show. I appreciate it. Sarah says, I've seen the most awful mold in Portland. Yes. Portland, Oregon apartments. Yes. And Oregon has some of the worst homelessness. Yes. And some of the strongest renter and tenant laws. Oregon. Yes. And although they are strong tenant rights, there are, yep, the tenants don't seem to have any recourse and have having to move. Correct. And the reason is all the people who own these things are big businesses because the little guys can't survive. The little guys can't survive. So, of course, the big guys do it. They get around it. They have lawyers. Not just that. Here's the thing that people don't realize. Not only do they have lawyers, they use expediters. And I spoke about this before. In New York, expediters are legal. Expediters, you can go to New York City website, New York State website. It's right there, how to be one. You can type in Google Expediter NYC. They will give you an actual how you can be one, how it works. What an expediter does is they advocate on your behalf at the Department of Buildings. Well, if I'm a guy who owns 20 buildings, Sarah, and has 1,000 units, think about this. I told you that the average guy or gal who owns one thing, right? The first one thing, one unit makes about 60, 70 grand a year, right? That's what they make. The average guy who has 20 buildings makes about $2 million a year. Personally, not even his businesses, just himself. He takes home from those an average about $2 million. He makes more, but average. He might make 20, but at least 2 million in his pocket. Other benefits and stuff, investments and such, but just himself, 2 million. If I'm putting 2 million in my pocket, how much does my business have? So my business has at least 10, right? If not 20. Well, I got $10 million. I can take 5 million of that and buy as many expediters as I want, Sarah. So if someone's got some, I don't know, black mold, whatever, I got to expedite that or head on down to DOB, Department of Buildings, and be like, you don't want to talk to me about that right now, do ya? We can talk about that later. Oh, my friend, I know you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, before you know it, it's 6 months. You got law firms and lawyers on retainer who can throw all types of, monkey wrenches into the system to slow things down. Yeah, absolutely. When you're that, and if you're to the point where you're actually someone who you're part of a massive firm, a private equity firm, oh, you got literally hundreds of millions that you can put into lawyers. You can't fight that. That's the reason why. That is actually the reason. So
that this is going, if solutions.
She's trying to find this, like, where's the answer?
They're going to come from those who are closest to the problem and those who are directly impacted and their neighbors who simply say, we're not going to allow millions of people to be the casualties of our city's renaissance, of our city's success and growth, because that's another.
We're not going to let our city grow and be successful. He literally just said that. He said that. We're not going to let my city grow and renaissance. Not doing that.
Dynamic. All of these people are losing their housing, not in the midst of poverty, but in the midst of mounting prosperity in cities like Atlanta, Nashville. So that.
Okay, there is not mounting prosperity in those cities. I don't know what he's made that up.
That's really what I see as most hopeful right now.
Yeah, because you have this mass inequality too.
True.
Where.
Yes, mass inequality. You're right, Krystal. I'm glad you brought that up. Mass inequality is accurate. So what you need is more of what he said. Renters' rights, like New York has. Government control, New York has. Right? Renters' protections, New York has. Right? Unionization, New York has. High minimum wage, New York has. New York has all the things you want. I'm wondering, what state has the highest wealth inequality in the union? Oh, right, New York. New York. Everything you're saying, New York has, and every outcome you want, New York does not achieve. In fact, the opposite happens in every case. And I give you data on this. It's called the Gini coefficient, Gini. Check it out. New York has the worst of all 50 states, the worst. So we have the worst wealth inequality in New York State, yet we have all the things that Krystal talks about. Literally, it is demonstrably true that everything she wants does not work. But she'll say it every single time. Andrea asked the question, how can you have prosperity without growth? They're all making these things up. Their ideology completely blinds them. Their ideology completely blinds them, Andrea. Don't get me wrong. I'm an ideologue too. Not opposite of them, obviously, but I'm an ideologue too. But I'm giving you actual data. Where's their data? The data is, it's bad. That's their data. That's it. That's the problem. And it can't be that way. right? It can't be that way. So Sarah says, I'd love to learn what the Libertarian Party's philosophy on the stock market is. I don't know how it can be ethical. Can we have a strong economy without investments? I'm going to tell you something that I think is radical, and most libertarians don't believe this, but I do. The stock market should not be run by the SEC. That's the problem. The stock market should be run, I'm not joking, by a gaming commission. Yes. Why? Because it's a gamble. It's a game. It's a casino. The stock market is a casino. That's what it is. It's a very nice, big, worldwide, lot of prestige casino. So run it like one. A gaming commission. Which means what did I have to do? I have to tell you what the odds on every bet you make. That's it. Here are the odds on a bet you make. Treat it like gambling. You'll have a fairer stock market. It must be transparent, right? The gaming, look, all of the games you play in all casinos, the odds are right there. It's transparent. You see it. You see how it works. You should see it. You should know that when you go, you should know that when you get a mortgage now, that the odds are high your mortgage is going to go into the stock market. Most people don't know that. Your life insurance going to go into the stock market. What? Yeah, since they got rid of Glass-Steagall, since Clinton got rid of Glass-Steagall, all the stuff you thought was safe is all in the stock market now. That's why 2008 happened. It all went to the stock market. You shouldn't have put mortgages in the stock market. You shouldn't have put that stuff all in the stock market now. Run by a gaming commission. Things will be much better. It'll be open. That's how it works. And Sarah goes, it's a casino. Yes, but the house always wins. It does. And that's the point. You know that. See, Sarah, that is my point. You know that. You know the house always wins. So you make a decision on whether or not you want to go into the casino or not. Exactly right. So you can decide. I've got some extra cash. I like gambling. I mean, I'm making that, I don't know if you do, but for argument's sake, you do. I like gambling. I'm probably gonna lose some money, but it's okay. I'm not doing it with my rent money. I'm not doing it with my mortgage money. I'm not gonna let the farm go away. I got extra cash. I love playing blackjack. I'm gonna go play blackjack. And if I happen to win, awesome. And if I lose, I had a good time and I stayed in a cool hotel. Life is good. Great. That should be it. There we go. Sarah says, I guess that's why I stay out of casinos. Yes, that's my point. You would go if you enjoyed it, but you would see it as a casino. And we should see it as that. And we know that's how that works. So anyway, hope I answered your question at least.
You know, in these cities, you need the people who are going to work at McDonald's, who are going to do the Uber Eats or the DoorDash. You need,
True. Emily is lost. She can't fight back on this. Her personality isn't strong enough. And I think she's afraid that if she opens up her mouth too much, Krystal might fire her.
And that's the economic system we apparently have.
Yeah.
You need that working class, but you increasingly have completely priced them out of housing. And then you don't have, I know Atlanta is notorious for not having sufficient public transit also, so that people can actually, conveniently commute in. And,
True.
Speaking to some of that gentrification aspect, one of the families, I'm blanking on the name of the woman that you focus on, one of them had lived previously and grown up in Atlanta in a public housing project. And actually I have very fond memories of that public housing project and what life was like there. Those were demolished.
Yep.
And then I believe what happened is they built some replacement that was like mixed income housing.
So to be clear, the public housing was demolished. They built, she won't say who they is. Why? Because they is government. And she can't insult government. So she'll say they. Instead of saying the government screwed up and built this because their zoning rules and laws are terrible and they won't leave it to the private sector to make it actually work. Like he told you the private sector is the way it works.
But never sufficient to replace the number of units.
So the government failed. Okay.
That had previously been lost. And so I wonder what we can learn from that dynamic.
Yes. What can we learn from the dynamic where the government does not provide effective transportation, knocks down buildings, and doesn't replace them effectively? What can we learn from that? Tell me.
The way that, this kind of like well-intentioned reform movement ultimately exacerbated the issue of, housing crisis for people in the city.
One, why do you think it was well-intentioned? And what makes you think it was a housing movement? You've just made that up. You don't know that those things are true.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean,
Okay,
I think through Brit's story, Brit is the name of the person that you were just referencing. Through her story, I mean, you kind of get American housing policy in the life of one single family, one single individual. And like you said, she grew up in public housing. She was determined to make Atlanta her home, to make a...
Did not answer the question at all again. Second time, does not answer the question. Why? Doesn't fit the narrative. Twice in a row, does not answer the question, doesn't fit the narrative. Now, supposedly, Krystal is a journalist, I guess. Supposedly, Emily's a journalist. I guess they act like it, at least. They're wearing uniforms of that, at least. No re-answer the question in a second way. No trying to get him to answer the question. No saying you're not going to answer the question. Just keep telling stories out of your book, because it fits my narrative.
Home for herself and her kids in the city. And she has this line like, this city is just mine, is just as much mine as anyone's. Like, I'm not going anywhere. But the title of the book comes from Brit. There is no place for us, because she realized...
Didn't answer the question at all. She's okay. The first question was asked by Emily, what's a community answer? He just said, it's bad. Then Krystal says, okay, the government screwed up, but I can't say government, so I'm gonna say they, because that won't fit my narrative. So I'll just say they built it, as if, so you can think that who built it was the evil private sector. It wasn't. This was all government central planning, which failed. So central planning failed is what she actually said, but she says they, so we don't hear central planning failed, which is what she actually said. And she goes to him, what can we learn from that? Now he's actually smart. He goes, wait a minute, she just said central planning failed. Well, I can't agree with that. That doesn't fit my narrative. I've already screwed up and answered one question early on during this interview when I said the private sector is the answer. I can't do that again, or no one will buy my book and no one will put me on their show. So I can't do that, because I can't do anything that's libertarian ever. So instead, I'm just going to keep saying how things are bad. And you who are left-leaning can assume that it's all because private sector.
That this city that she's given everything to, you know, Brit works at the airport when the book begins. She's working at, you know, a place that's like the pride and joy of Atlanta's economy, the busiest airport in the world. And I think it's important to note that one of the most perverse things that this book documents is that the working homeless, these are not people on the fringes of society. They are the people whose labor, whose bodies are powerful.
Okay, but what she asked you, this is all nice, but what she asked you was, what can we learn from the failures of central planning? That's what she asked you. The first question was asked was, are there community answers? You dodged that one. Second question was, which she didn't mean to ask that, but she did. Why? What can we learn from central planning failing? His answer was, her story is cool, and you should feel sorry for her. I agree. But what's the answer? The answer is central planning doesn't work. That would be the appropriate. If Krystal had asked me that question, I'd say, that's a great question, Krystal. What we can learn from that is central planning doesn't work. It fails. It fails in my city in New York, and it fails in a big city like Atlanta. It doesn't work. What we should do is allow the private sector, like Homeboy said up front, to fix these things. Let people build more. Stop landmarking. That's dumb. Stop saying that, and this is New York City rule, if the building is 4 stories high and you knock it down, you can only build a building that's 4 stories high. Stop stupid shit like that. You could do that. All those things you could do. But no, just private sector bad.
Powering the very growth that, again, perversely, is not just pushing them out of the neighborhoods they grew up in, but pushing them out of housing, stable housing altogether.
Okay, I have said this more than once. This is my whole plan for New York State. We go across the country. We should be encouraging private equity firms and anybody else who wants to buy housing, if they want to buy housing, or just build housing, to build rent-to-own housing. Why does that matter? If you build rent-to-own housing and turn every person who is now currently in public housing into a rent-to-own scheme, create that. But Larry, then we're paying these people their rent, and they're taking that money and they're buying a house. We're giving them a house. Yes, we are. And you might go, that sounds crazy. No, it's not crazy at all. 2 reasons. 1, government does it first. Why? Because the government is now giving away the houses. Why do I want that? Because they're a burden. You just saw This Is Life talk about the burden these houses are. Give people the ability to buy their own homes. What happens? They will own the home. Gentrification only sucks when you're a renter. When you're an owner, gentrification is awesome because your property value goes up. You can instead buy another home if you want to. You can sell your home. You can get a loan and get your home. You can start a business with equity in your home. You become a homeowner. You can do that if you have rent to own. But Larry, why should the government pay for it? You have two choices. Option one, let these people become owners in their own home. Option one. And what will happen? When they become owners, when they have the ownership mindset, a bunch of them will become entrepreneurs or start businesses. They will then, by default, pull themselves out of this spiral and will no longer be on the dole. That's a percentage. Another percentage will stay on the dole, but you have an option. Eventually have them buy their home or pay their rent forever and be responsible anytime there's mold or a problem or the heat goes away. You're responsible. You, the taxpayer. It's a whole lot cheaper to have them buy the house and you walk away instead of paying their rent and everything else forever. So it's a way better answer. Plus, over time, you don't own any more housing because you let it all go away. Well, Larry, who build more housing? That's the private other people who do it, developers. Now, how New York State works is they pay a bunch of taxes on that. And what I'm saying is, don't pay the taxes. Yes, Larry, you're giving tax breaks to the developers. Yes. Yes. So they'll build rent-to-own housing. So they can build it. They can begin to have ownership. The individual people have ownership, and they get away with it by not paying any taxes on the damn thing. But Larry, you give them tax breaks. They're solving my homelessness problem. I'm not paying for the shelters. What do I care? What do I care? They're not saying that. Like renters' rights. Stupid. Doesn't work. John, give me a member. He says, Larry, my guess is if they have ownership of a home, they'll take ownership of the local community as well. Correct. And that's demonstrably true. Demonstrably true. People who have ownership take ownership in their homes and communities more. It's a fact. It's how it works. So yes, that's what I want. I want people who are in trouble to create an ownership mindset. Yes, and this will help that. It's happened before. It did it in Singapore. It did it in London. It works. These are things that actually have already worked. I'm not making this up. It already works. It's already happened. That's the piece, right? Maybe they decide to own that home and then buy another one and then rent out the one they have. Good. If they're renting out the home that we used to pay their rent for, now we're not paying their rent anymore. In fact, now they're hiring other people. Good. Their kids will probably go to a school. Their kids will probably go do something great now. They won't be in the dole either. Good. Phil says, that's a great point. One of my coworkers paid $700 per month for subsidized rent in a housing project. Imagine if he was able to build equity. Yeah. So we're subsidizing that person's rent forever. And probably their children too, forever. Or they could gain ownership and then we could stop paying. Yeah. Then they could stop paying. We could do that.
And the policies that emerged in the absence of public housing, once all the public housing in Atlanta was demolished, because Atlanta was the first city in the country to build public housing.
So who demolished it? Who demolished all the public housing? Was it random vandals who came in from the Germanic tribes and burned them to the ground? Is that what it was? It wasn't them, was it? Was it I don't know, rogue bandits from the Road Warrior in a post-apocalyptic Australia with humongous, and they came by and burned it? Is that what happened? Or was it central planning?
In the 30s, and it was the first city in the country to sort of undertake this neoliberal experiment.
Yeah, I think it was the government.
In demolishing public housing, and turning to the private market through vouchers and through other, incentivized.
Okay, that's not, see, this is it. Turning to the private market, he says, through vouchers. Vouchers is not private market. There's no difference in that when someone says, well, Obamacare was the free market. What? I've heard people say this. Obamacare is the free market. It is. Yeah. See, there's a marketplace. Some of you just fell out of your chair. I've heard that more than once. More than once. Yes. Obamacare is the free market because it's a marketplace. See? Same thing. They went to the private with vouchers. That's not private, is it? That's not private. That wasn't what I said. I didn't say that. That's what he said. Saying it didn't work. It's because the vouchers. That's why. No, it's because centralized planning doesn't work. That's the problem. So yes. Paula says, a gentrified neighborhood in Cincinnati is being trashed by the homeless who used to live there. It's depressing. Yeah, because they got kicked out. Imagine they were owners. Paula, imagine if the people who were there, who left, were actually had ownership. They wouldn't put up with it because it'd be their house now. Exactly my point. It would be their house now. It is a big difference. Yes. Phil says, hold on, Phil. The public housing in Albany was built so poorly, they needed to gut it and rebuild them every 20 years. Wow. That's terrible. Yeah, absolutely. So just terrible. All right.
Private development to fill that need. And Britt's stories are really tragic.
Okay. He said earlier that the private was the only way to make it work, didn't he? Didn't he say that? Did I miss that? He said that, right? Yes. Look, if you like what I'm saying, I'm going to ask you one more time. Click the button known as like. Why haven't you clicked it? I'm not seeing everybody click it. So there's some of you out there who are like, I don't know if I want to click it. If you don't want to click it, then you want more people to be homeless. Click it. Lima, India, Kilo, Echo, click, and use any digit you want. I'm not looking. Do what you want to do. I'm good. Whatever you feel. And if you haven't shared this, if you haven't told your friends about this, why do you hate me? Tell your friends, share this into a Facebook group, share this on Facebook, share this on X, let people know, put in an email, send to your friend who thinks that they know everything about housing, send them, they can yell at me, call me names, I don't mind. Oh, gotta get called names all the time. Do that. Yes. And of course, I always ask you, follow me in all the things, Facebook, X, and Rumble. And if you want to get your chat right to the front, please super chat me on YouTube, or you can rant me on Rumble, either of those two. It is very good if you can do that. It helps out tremendously. You can become a member. That's always good. You can be a member on YouTube at $4.99, or click that join button, or you can go to Rumble. You can click subscribe only during the live. I don't know why Rumble does that, but Rumble does do that. So yeah, if you can, that will be amazing. So Bonnie over on Instagram says, truth. She's correct. It is true. She's right. Absolutely. All righty. Let me keep going here.
Example of how much that promise has failed. Okay. And ultimately, her story is an example of how we need just a radical paradigm shift in how we think about housing in this country. Like, housing is, as it's currently conceived, is just auctioned off to the highest bidder.
Wait a minute. He just said housing is auctioned off to the highest bidder. That's the market. And he told us a bit ago that the only way to fix it was his words, let the market do its thing. That's what he said. But he realized he made an error there. He realized he made an error. So he's like, I got to change this now. I now have to say, yeah, it's just auctioned off. Like, people could just buy it for money. What? That's what he's saying. People could just buy houses for money. Now, I've shown you already with data that it isn't auctioned off to the highest bidder. Prices do go down when you end rent control, when you end regulations. I have shown you that in Texas. I've shown you that in Argentina. I've shown you that in Florida. I gave you the data. If you go back, you'll see it. I showed you the data. So it's not auctioned off to the highest bidder. He's made that up because that's a talking point he wants to say. Prices can and do come down. I showed you data on that. He just made this up because that's a talking point we have.
One caseworker in the book refers to it as the housing hunger games. And
it's the housing hunger games because this part is true, because of the limited amount of government housing, because we have limited housing. We have limited housing. So if you build more housing, you will not have a hunger games and prices will come down. I've expressed it. Me and Phil went through this about 10 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago. He wasn't listening, Phil. We went through it and he wasn't listening. He wasn't. Sarah, thank you for the $5. You are also impressed. Are you also impressed at how Larry juggles these live streams and keeps up with comments, never skipping a beat? Larry can speak on everything. Oh, thank you, Sarah. I do try to speak on everything to the best of my ability. I do. I enjoy the back and forth tremendously. I people have asked me if, Larry, why don't you do more like straight videos and such? It will be easier. It probably would be, right? It would be easier for me to be a page where I just put out one video per week on something and just did it and gave it to my team and had them cut it up and put it up. It would be easier. It would. But I would lack motivation. To be very forward with you, I'd lack motivation. That doesn't motivate me. What motivates me is seeing something that I care about, like this, being able to chat on it like this, and then having a back and forth. That part, that motivates me. I want to do that, right? As you know, I'm bugging you guys for cash all the time because I take a bath doing this, right? So I don't, this podcast does not make money. So that's why I'm always bugging you for something, of course. So I do it because I love it, because I want to do it, because I enjoy the back and forth, and because I'm really hoping in my heart that if enough people see what I'm talking about with enough, I hope I show more compassion. I hope I show more realism. I hope I call people out in a way that makes sense and that's funny and interesting, so that now you can talk to your friends. You can talk to people and go, yeah, that's not true. I saw what Larry was talking about. I saw that. He gave me receipts. Like, he didn't just say stuff. He showed me evidence. He had an actual argument for what was right and what was wrong. And you see me, look, and I beat up left and right. People think I'm left or think I'm right. What was it, 2 days ago? I beat up that neocon guy. He was right-leaning. He was hardcore right. These people are lefties. I'm beating them up. They're wrong, because here's the difference. Most people in America, most, not all, but most people in America who lean left and lean right still want government to impose their will. I don't want government to impose your will, whether your will is left-leaning or right-leaning. I want you to be able to be as left or as right as you want to be, whether that's far left, not left, far right, not so right. I don't care. I want you to be you. That's what I want. And that's why I do this stuff all the time. You should be able to, you want to live on a farm, Sarah? Enjoy. You want to live in a big city? Enjoy. All good. Thank you for the comment, by the way. I do appreciate it tremendously. Thank you. All right.
Done is we've said this essential human need is going to be, that people are just going to be at the mercy of a market that may or may not have an incentive to keep them housed. And if rents.
So they have no incentive to keep, that's what he just said, that may not have to keep them housed. So does government. If government did, wouldn't government build more housing? If government did, wouldn't government not support this hotel industrial complex you just talked about? If government did, it doesn't. Government doesn't make any money off of this. Government gains money from taxpayers, right? And then gives money to cronies. Who makes money off of this? People who get rent. Who gets rent? Landlords. How can they get rent? If they have people who are housed. I don't know what you're saying. It makes literally no sense. You are actually literally just, you're contradicting yourself in every other sentence. I showed you Texas. I showed you Argentina. When you remove government, you know what landlords love to do? This is the thing. All landlords I know love this one thing. They love it. Collecting rent. They love it. It's a thing. It's like their thing, right? When you're a landlord, that's your thing. You like to collect rent. That's what you do. I get it. I'm not mad at you. You're a landlord. Collect rent. I got it. Well, you know who you cannot collect rent from? People who aren't in your property. Now, how that works? There's got to be somebody in your property for you to collect rent. Again, how that works. Phil, you with me? We're going to walk this guy through this one, right? That's how that works. So if someone's in the property, housed, as you like to say, then they can pay me rent. And if I'm a landlord, I really like that. But if I have no incentive, as he said, to keep them housed, well, then they wouldn't pay me and I can't get rent that I like so much. And Chris was like, yeah, they want to throw people out. And same sentence, you go, and they want to collect all the money. How? They're throwing people out. What? That doesn't make any sense. They would like to keep people in to pay them money.
skyrocket past the rate of inflation, so be it. We need a different approach where we start to treat housing the way we do like public education, where we just say this is a basic part of being.
All right. Mike, if you watch it, I'm not going to get triggered. I promise. I almost got triggered. I'm not gonna. Okay. He said earlier on, when she asked him directly, how do we fix this? He said, his words, private market, let the private market do its thing. Let the private market solve the problem. That's what he said. Well, he had to stop that because he made a mistake. Because Krystal was like, don't say that. That's not a narrative. So now she asks what's going on. And he says, treat it like public education. New York State runs public education. New York State spends the most money out of every single state in the nation. Over $35,000 per kid per year. No one matches it. One country is worse. That's Luxembourg. And that's, of course, cut by country to country. And it's like 7 people in Luxembourg, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, so basically in the entire world, New York State spends the most. Does it rank number one? Has almost, not the lowest, but almost the lowest literacy rate in the entire country. New York State. Mayor Eric Adams 3 years ago literally said, we're going to start teaching our kids to read. 2 years ago, not 200 years ago, 2 years ago. And you want that. We have the most expensive education. We should like education. Why? When you make things a right, here's what you do. You make them expensive. That's all. They don't get better. How do I know that? How do I know that competition in education is the right answer? How do I know that? Because I made that up again? No. Because the wealthy go to private schools, which are all in competition. The wealthy, who he hates because they got lucky, they're rich because they're lucky. Remember, you have property. It's because you're lucky. He said that. His words, you're fortunate to have property. You just got lucky. You don't work hard for your property, loser. You just got lucky. That's what he told you. So you got lucky. You got some property. So you got some assets. Your kids go to private school. They go to private school in a competition. Yes. When you make it a right, you create a two-tiered system. Again, healthcare, a right in New York State. Education, a right in New York State. Everything he wants, New York has. Everything they're saying, New York, all these lefties, everything they're saying, New York has. It's happening now. We have the largest wealth gap in the nation. We have some of the worst school districts in the entire country are in Rochester, New York. $35,000 a year for the worst school districts in the country. And this guy is this brainwashed, this blinded by his ideology that he would go, it should be a right. Everything should be a right. He should give people houses. Years ago, I'm at a libertarian event, or some event. It was a political event. And there was a young lady there, probably, 18, 19, 20, young woman. And she says, you know, Larry, I hear what you say, but I think I'm a communist. I said, really? She said, yeah, I think I'm a communist. I said, okay. I said, you think that like everybody should like get stuff and have some basic minimums? She goes, yeah, it's true. We shouldn't have private ownership. I said, okay, like houses too. She goes, yeah. I said, okay. So like everybody should have like, I don't know, a 2-bedroom apartment. She went, yeah, that's a great idea. I said, oh, I love that idea. I love the idea of everyone having a 2-bedroom apartment. I love that. 2-bedroom apartment. Okay. I have a question. What happens if I have one kid and he's got 5 kids? Does he get a bigger apartment or do I get a bigger apartment? Do I have to give my apartment up? She said, oh, I don't know. I said, yeah, it's a problem. So you know what usually happens? She said, what? I said, people with weapons come in and decide. That's what usually happens. They usually have guns, but they might have machetes. Depends on the country. They might have spears, they might have machetes. They might have handguns. Depends. Clubs. Depends. But people with weapons, almost always men, will show up and they'll decide. She goes, oh, I hate that. I said, I know. It's kind of what happens every time now. Huh. She says, I don't like that. I said, me neither. That's what he's saying. Let's make housing a right. Treat it like that. In what case has that worked? Ever? Let me say it again. In what case has that worked? Ever? We'll make it a right. It'll be better. No. What happens in a two-tiered system? The wealthy are never going to go into his system, ever, because they're wealthy. They're never going to go into a system. So who goes into the system? The poor. So he says the poor is at least, just like Medicare for all. Medicare for all is not Medicare for all. It's Medicare for y'all. You poors get Medicare, and I'm going to have my private doctor. You poors have government housing, and I'm going to have my mansion and my gated community. That's what they actually mean. Meanwhile, they're going to talk about how bad all the rich people are when they're rich themselves. This is so insanely stupid. But it's ideology. Why would you want to treat housing like a right? Why would you want to treat someone's labor like you have a right to someone's labor? How does that work out? Andrea, perfectly. Sounds like the Soviet Union. Does he want to live in government Soviet housing? No, he wants you to, Andrea. He doesn't want to. He wants you to. Krystal doesn't want to live in there. Krystal wants you to live in that. See, Krystal's wealthy, so she's going to have her own private community. You go live in Soviet housing. And then they can see how good they are to you, Andrea. They love you. They care about you. They put you in Soviet housing. Done deal. This never works. And they still think it again. And there are thousands of people who watch this show and go, yeah, that's the best. Let's do that. That's a great idea. You should be showing them this. It doesn't work ever. I would ask you, please show me one example of it working. It doesn't. And I say, what's the best answer? The one the wealthy have. So let's give people the same system the wealthy have. Is that so crazy? The wealthy have this great system they like so much that they pay out some money for it. Okay. Why don't we give everybody that system? How about that? There we go.
Being in this country, we're going to guarantee it for everybody.
Whenever you hear in this country, that's always someone on the left always saying that because it's an assault on capitalism. We do this in this country. In this country, we do, because in the other countries, they're way better. Like Europe is way better. Is it?
And there was a time when we had that vision as a country, and there are peer nations who have.
There are times when we had that in a country. When was that? When did we make housing a right? I don't remember that.
Have implemented that vision. It's not this utopian, radical ideal.
That's exactly right.
It's exactly wrong. You're both full of shit.
Well, the book, it will break your heart. If you read it, it will absolutely break your heart. But
yes, I agree. It probably will, because there are some terrible things happening, but they're not happening because of government. That's the truth. They're all happening because of government. That's real. No matter what you might think, they're happening because of government is doing this. This is centralized planning failing. This is a plan to where we're trying to find answers through government and centralized planning when we don't need to, right? If any of you have actually read Bastiat's The Law, if you're new to libertarianism and you want to read a short, quick book, the book is called The Law by Frederick Bastiat. He's French, and it's about France. I think it's 1840s. I think 1800s. I think it's 1840s, if not mistaken. And he's talking about how stuff works. And in one of the stories he talks about, a guy says, "Wait a minute, how do you feed the people of Paris?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" "Well, where is your ministry of bread?" "Well, we don't have one." "Why not? How are you going to feed the people?" "The market does it. People who want bread, then there's people who bake the bread, and then they buy the bread needed. Done. That's how that works." "What?" Guy can't believe it. But he's like, that's how it works. So why would we have to have a ministry of bread? We don't need one. "Well, Larry, that's not true. We see it in Argentina. They got rid of 22 different ministries in Argentina. And guess what you still have? All those things. Better. The proof is there. Argentina is the example that we've been waiting for. And New York is the bad example that we've seen 1,000 times and never learned from. Yes. Laura says, these idiots are the exact reason I sold my rentals. Yes. When people do not respect property rights, I don't want to own property. Correct. Yes. Exactly right. Yes. 100%. Phil says, I've known landlords who will keep rent constant for good tenants. Yes, correct. That's accurate. If some guy's paying constantly and on time, you shut up. You take your money. Because as I said, what landlords love to do, it's kind of their thing, Phil. Don't be mad at them. It's their thing. They love collecting rent. Yeah. They love collecting rent. That's their thing. So if you allow them to collect lots of rent, then they tend to be pretty happy. So yes. Rick says, government is the malady that the ignorant think is the cure. Correct. That is accurate completely. Phil goes on to say the law is excellent. There's a free audiobook on YouTube too. There we go. Yes. 100%. That's absolutely true. It is. Yes. If you guys, if you're new to libertarianism, that would be I would say that's the book you should read. And it's short. You can knock it out in like a day. It's like 70 pages, something like that. It's a small book. It's really good. I appreciate that. Yes. So Phil says we need to get rid of the Department of Murder. If it wasn't for that department, we'd have no murder. Why hadn't I thought of that? You know what we should do, Phil? Get rid of the Department of Murder and at the same time, outlaw murder. See? If we would outlaw murder and then get rid of the Department of Murder, there'd be no murder. Oh, wait, we've already outlawed murder and there is a Department of Murder. Oh, could it be that has nothing to do with it at all? Yeah, it could be that, right? It could be that. Just saying. Guys, I'm going to ask you one more time if you could. Please click the like button. I know I bug you. I bug you because I've been shadow banned forever. I want to fix it. So please click that button. It does matter tremendously. Share and repost to the best of your ability. We got to keep this going as much as we can. But remember something, 2 things. If you are watching this and it's not live, right? If it's not live, if you were watching it later on, it's not Wednesday night, it's Thursday or Friday, Saturday, you're watching this again because you love it so much, whatever the case may be, after this is done and anything pops up, the videos pop up, grab another video. Mr. Gore Rhythm loves that. Tremendously, he loves that. So please do that. Also, after this show is over, please come back after and put a comment. Put a comment down. And I would like you to tell me a story about renting. How about that? A renter or renting story. And then, oh, no, you know what? Scratch that. Scratch that. Don't, well, once you can. Instead, give me a good government book, libertarian and or government book that you think is a good one. Put it in the chat. We'll talk about that afterwards. After the live, come back, put it in, and I'll respond. Guys, I will be on again tomorrow, sometime around 7 or 7:30 or 8, some in that area. And I will see you all very soon.